Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. First and foremost, I want to wish everybody out there a happy Easter. If you're celebrating the holiday, I know we have had better ones that have come before this, but I hope that everybody's making the best out of what they have today. And if you're celebrating the holiday, I hope that you're doing it with, at least some of your family and some of your loved ones. But if not, make sure you hop on Zoom or make sure you hop on, FaceTime or whatever it is. And, give your family a ring, give your loved ones a ring and, do it virtually. So I know it's not optimal, and I know we prefer the face-to-face contact, and I know I certainly prefer to be around my whole family shoving Italian food down my fat trap all day. But sometimes in life, we don't get what we want, right? And we have a choice to either, be miserable about it, or we have a choice to just keep it moving, right? And I choose to keep it moving and try to keep as positive as I can. And I know that this too shall pass. This isn't going to last forever. This isolation isn't going to last forever. These quarantines aren't going to last forever. All of this anxiety isn't going to last forever. We're going to get back to our lives, folks. We're going to get back to the way things were. And we're going to get back to doing what's really important. Putting people like Ghislaine Maxwell in prison, all right? So just, we got to hang tight, hang tough, another few weeks, and the worst should be over, and we should be starting to move towards some normalcy in our lives, right? So, again, I hope that everybody out there who celebrates the holiday today is having as good of a day as possible. I would say I hope you're relaxing, but that's all most of us have been doing for quite some time at this point, considering the shutdowns and the lockdowns. So I just hope that everybody keeps things in perspective and doesn't get too frustrated with what's going on. And make sure you always keep the big picture in view, right? Keep the big picture in view, keep things in context, and let's eat this elephant one bite at a time. It's the only way to get through it. Also, to those of you who have been donating to the GoFundMe throughout this whole entire ordeal for the last month or so, it's very humbling for me. I don't even talk about the GoFundMe on the program anymore. Usually I would end the show and I'd leave the GoFundMe address so that if people wanted to support the program, they would know how to do that. But for the last month or so, I don't even do that anymore on the podcast. I get it. I understand. Everybody's up against it right now. I mean, everybody's impacted one way or another throughout this whole entire ordeal. And for me, this was never about finances. This was never about making money. I didn't even have a GoFundMe or any sort of way for people to donate for the show for quite some time. And then some of the listeners wanted to, help out. And so I started the GoFundMe. And here we are up until now, we're in April now. And we started it in November, and the goal was $3,500 or so, and we're sitting at about $2,800 right now, and that's pretty awesome. It's very humbling that people believe in the show enough that they would pony up their hard-earned fazuls to support what we have going on here. And I don't take that lightly. I take that and my responsibility to the listeners here on the show, I take it very seriously. I don't come on this show and expect people just to tune in. I take everything seriously here. I take the trust that you put in what we have going on here very seriously. And from the bottom of my heart, honestly, to all of you who have donated throughout the whole entire time, honestly, and especially those who have kept donating throughout this whole entire thing, I don't even know what to say. I mean, it's moving, right? It's that you believe in what's going on so much that you continue to donate, even though we're in the grips of this pandemic. It's awesome stuff, folks, and I really appreciate your support. And I promise to continue on the same path here of doing what we've always done on this podcast. Pandemic, rain, sleet, hail, it doesn't matter. We're going to continue to pursue the truth here. And with your help going forward after this pandemic passes, I got some big things planned. Another trip to New Mexico, a trip down to the Virgin Islands. I have some things in the works. And of course, all of that I'm going to need the support of the listeners on the podcast later on when we get to that point. But just know that I appreciate all of you. I appreciate everybody who donates. I appreciate everybody who just gives me their time, their life minutes. That's even more important than financial support, to be honest with you. I mean, somebody sits down. This is long form information gathering here. This isn't like just reading a Facebook post. You have to actually sit down and lock in to sit through the podcast and to listen to what we have going on here. And I don't take that lightly. I really don't take that lightly. I never started this show thinking that we'd be close to 500,000 downloads or anything like that. So from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate all of you who listen to this podcast. I appreciate all of you who support this podcast. And going forward, we're going to have our foot pressed all the way down on the accelerator because we're going to go after these people like we always have. Nothing's going to stop that. Nothing's going to get in the way of that. Nothing is going to deter that. And together, they have to listen to us, right? I've always said it's not about me, it's about we, especially when it comes to this case. All of us standing together with our voices in solidarity is a very powerful tool. And they fear that. They fear that, and they know they're going to be forced to take action because of it. So I just wanted to, start the program off by saying thank you for everybody who has donated since the beginning of the show, and especially throughout this whole entire crazy ass pandemic, right? So we're going to jump into our article today, and the article is from Above the Law, and the headline is, "Who's up for a fun night out watching Alan Dershowitz talk about sex trafficking?" With his panties on, probably. This article is by Elizabeth Dye. Just how broken is Alan Dershowitz's brain? He's already gone on national television to talk about his perfect sex life and the state of his underpants. Well, we know that Mr. Dershowitz, he kept his underpants on while he was receiving massages from underage girls, so he's innocent, okay? Just ask him, he'll tell you. The great Alan Dershowitz. He filed 4 failed bar complaints against David Boies and accused the law firm Boies Schiller of being a RICO operation. Boy, is that funny, huh? Isn't that all these people love to do that, right? Whatever crimes they're involved in, they love to point the finger at you and say, wait a minute, you're involved in so-and-so crime. Meanwhile, Dershowitz is involved in a racketeering operation, hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, such good friends with him that he goes and visits Jeffrey Epstein on New Year's Day, flies to New Mexico for 1 hour, supposedly. Is anybody buying any of this BS? Nobody is buying your BS, Alan Dershowitz. Stop it. 2 weeks ago, he fired off a tweet storm defending his 1992 LA Times op-ed entitled, "Statutory Rape is an Outdated Concept." Let me read that to you again. The vaunted, the honorable Alan Dershowitz thinks statutory rape is an outdated concept. Of course he thinks that. Of course he's going to write that sort of op-ed because he wants that to be the law. He wants to normalize that sort of thing. He's no different than a member of NAMBLA, all right? This is a sick man, in my opinion. Alan Dershowitz, you're a sick dude, in my opinion, buddy. Nobody wants to see you in your tighty whities. Nobody wants to massage you. And nobody believes your bullshit. And now, he's headlining a delightful synagogue event defending the biblical Joseph's brothers on charges of kidnapping and child trafficking. Boy, isn't that fitting? Alan Dershowitz, the hero of child molesters and traffickers, defending an historic child molester and trafficker. Boy, isn't that fitting? If you somehow manage to attend a law school without Jews, perhaps at BYU, you may be unfamiliar with the tradition of putting historical events or the merits of various foodstuffs on trial. If so, well, it's just as nerdy as you think it is. I don't really think that's nerdy, to be honest with you. I kind of dig it. When I was in college, we did the same thing. When I was going to school for political science, we had the same sort of thing. Mock debates, mock cabinet meetings, etc., etc. So that's par for the course when it comes to, your schooling. And I'm sure in law school, there's a lot of that goes on. As the Jerusalem Post pointed out, this is New York's Temple Emanu-el's 6th annual The People vs. Joseph Brothers event, with former Governor Chris Christie playing prosecutor and U.S. District Judge Ronnie Abrams adjudicating. It will no doubt be a lovely evening, albeit with some extra subtext with Alan Dershowitz arguing for the defense. I mean, you can't even make this up. You can't even make this up. Why? Dershowitz is an absolute and utter tool. This guy is so brazen about how he feels and what he thinks is correct that he throws it in our face every chance he gets and gets away with it and smiles. And not only smiles, he's rewarded by being put on the biggest stage to defend the president in an impeachment hearing, as if there's no other constitutional lawyers that could have been brought up to defend Trump. You have to bring a man like Dershowitz, who is not only one of Jeffrey Epstein's biggest enablers, but a man who is accused of taking part in the sex trafficking ring, and you think this is the proper man to put in front of the world on your legal team? Absolutely horrible decision-making, garbage decision-making, and it's sickening. Was Joseph old enough to give consent, or did his mature appearance convince his brothers that he was really into it? Did he lead his hapless siblings on with the suggestive coat of many colors? If he was subsequently paid for his labor, does it mean that he actually wanted it all along? Ay, ay, ay. And now, and most importantly, whose idea was it to let a guy who has been accused of having sex with multiple girls at Jeffrey Epstein's house participate in a discussion of child trafficking? Yeah, that's probably the best question that could be asked about all of this, right? Who was in charge of booking this? And who thought that it would be a good idea to have Alan Dershowitz come and be the defender of ancient sex trafficking and child abuse cases? Who on the planet thinks that that's a good idea? That person should be relieved of duty ASAP. Are you people mashugana? The man has been whining for months about being left out of a brunch on Martha's Vineyard, and New York is welcoming him like this? Dershowitz already told the Jewish Telegraph Agency that he's Abraham, John Adams, and Abe Lincoln all rolled into one. Can you imagine having that sort of inflated opinion of yourself? You're John Adams, you're Abe Lincoln, and you're Abraham all rolled into one? No, you're literally none of those things, all right? You're an old-ass, disgusting man with gross proclivities who engaged in behavior that is some of the most heinous and hideous that I've ever read about, okay? So don't try and act like you're Abe Lincoln and John Adams and Abraham all rolled into one. You're none of those things. You're a decrepit, old, sick, crypt keeper-looking MF. I defend the guilty in order to protect not only them, but in order to assure that innocent people are not brought to trial and put through the personal agony that such a legal process entails. Yeah, right. You mean by bullying people, by destroying people that bring cases against you, by using every bit of your power and your pull within the system to destroy people? That's what you mean by that, right? Because, we all understand what sort of guy Alan Dershowitz is. We all understand that Alan Dershowitz doesn't play by the rules. We know what happened in Palm Beach, Alan Dershowitz. We know what you're up to, pal. If criminal defense lawyers were to refuse to zealously defend the guilty, then more and more innocent people would be brought to trial. Yeah, I think there's a lot more guilty people out there that have the appearance of not being guilty than Epstein, all right? Don't try and act like you're doing the world a favor by defending Epstein. Don't try and act like you were doing the world or the country a favor by making sure Epstein got off so he can continue his decades-long reign of terror, all right? Don't even try it. Which is an entirely noble sentiment, except that it presupposes a fair and adversarial legal system, unsusceptible to intimidation and influence by wealthy, well-connected litigants. And there you go, folks. That's it in a nutshell. When you have money, you have influence. When you have influence, you have power. When you have power, the world is your oyster. It takes a special kind of arrogance to tell a reporter, I may have done my job too well, as if a poor, Hispanic defendant credibly accused of molesting dozens of girls could lean on half the Justice Department and get 13 months of work release if only the great Alan Dershowitz was on the case. Boy, that's scathing. And she's right. She's absolutely right saying that, because we know the two-tier justice system's screwed up. We know that you or I would never get a fair shake. But guys like Dershowitz and Epstein, they get more than a fair shake. They get the whole entire tree shook to their advantage, and all the fruit falls out. You see, the two-tier justice system is absolutely 100% broken. It needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed now. So mazel tov to the staff at Temple Emanu-el on your big get. Luckily, our people never complain, cough, so probably only half the congregation will threaten to cancel their membership unless you disinvite that Dershowitz Farshtinker, I don't know what that word means, I think it's something in Hebrew. Good luck! And this just in, the event has been canceled, and all tickets will be refunded. That's a darn shame. Well, at least they came to their senses and canceled the event, right? But the fact that they thought it was a good idea in the first place to have Alan Dershowitz as the speaker here defending human traffickers just goes to show you how far out of whack we are when it comes to the narrative of the Jeffrey Epstein case. Some people still look at Dershowitz as some sort of hero in this case. That's why it's so important that we continue to get the message out. That's why it's so important that we continue the full court press. That's why it's so important that we do not stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein and his criminal enterprise. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, everybody, happy Easter, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. I'll be back later on with a daily drop. Until then,